In the Bible, we find quite a few instances where someone was taken captive and given a new name, or they went by two different names, or my favorite, where God changes their names. Something that I really enjoy studying in the Bible is names and about their origins and why God gave someone a specific name. The most notable stories start with Abraham, or should I say Abram and Sarai, and their bloodline. But my favorite instance where a name was changed wasn't an actual name change. Well, it was an attempted name change that 100% did not stick. Welcome back to My Life His Way, a place where we get to learn more about who our captain is and how we can live our lives in sync to his will. Now, when most people think about the book of Ruth, they automatically go to the love story between her and Boaz. But for me, something that's always stood out is Naomi's part in this, and specifically Naomi in chapter 1, verses 20 and 22. And it says, "And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter in law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest." Now, we are talking about name changes, and today we're talking about an attempted name change. I don't know if anyone caught that, but Naomi, this is when they're coming back to Bethlehem. Well, Ruth for the very first time, but Naomi is coming back to Bethlehem after many, many years of being gone in the land of Moab with her husband and her sons, who have unfortunately all passed away. Naomi here, because she's feeling sorry for herself, decides to change her name. And she says to call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. So Naomi sees the tragedy that has happened in her life, and she does not feel worthy of her name anymore. Now, according to Strong's concordance, her name, Naomi, means my delight or present, whereas Mara means to be bitter. Now, we don't know much about her life before this, besides the fact that she had a husband and two sons and two daughter in laws, right? But if we read her story before they come back to Bethlehem, before she comes home, her daughter in laws did not want to leave her. Now, I'm not a daughter in law, but I've seen many relationships between mother in laws and daughter in laws, and how tumultuous that they can be. And I don't know anyone who would want to stay with their mother in law so much that she has to tell them more than once to leave her because her sons are no longer alive and she cannot give them new sons, even if she got married tomorrow, right? So, her original name, her name, the only name she's ever been given, is My Delight or Pleasant. So, you can only imagine her character, right? Naomi was a pleasant woman. She was a delight to be around. And then she wants to be Mara, which means to be bitter. At this point, yes, she's bitter. Her husband is dead. Her sons are gone, and she has to come back to the place from whence she came, right? But that's not how it works. When God gives someone a name, he does it for a reason. When he changes someone's name, he's very specific in the reason why he does that, right? So we have Abraham, whose name means, Well, Abram before meant exalted father, and God changed his name to be Abraham, which means father of a multitude. So when his name was changed, it was changed after a promise, a new promise was made to him. So when God decides to change your name, or he decides to change someone else's name, or someone else's purpose in life, or their reason for being, it's for a good reason. And it's not because someone is feeling sorry about themselves. It's not because someone died. It's not because it's not for selfish reasons. God never does anything selfishly. Right. So here we see Naomi, she's troubled, she's sad, she's back home where she left, and she's trying to change her name. But it doesn't work that way. I love how, so she tells them to call her Mara when she comes into the gates in verse 20. But the next time she's mentioned, not of her own mouth, but in verse 22, says, So Naomi returned. It doesn't say so Mara returned. Not once do we ever see her called Mara again in the Bible. I think I've always thought that was very interesting and very powerful. Okay. So God had a specific purpose for this woman in this story, in the life that she was given. She wasn't meant to be a bitter person. She was meant to be a delight. She was meant to be a pleasant person, and she didn't want to be that anymore. But God was like, No, this is who I have called you to be, and I did not authorize you to change who you are. When God does not authorize us to change ourselves, it doesn't work. Clearly, here we see it does not work. There's so many different instances in our lives where we try to make things work for our own good because we're more comfortable that way, or we think, "Oh, it'll go better this way, if I settle for this person, or I'm never going to find someone else like this, so why don't I just stay or change who I am to make someone else happy?" It doesn't work that way. If God has not called you to do that with your life, when He's placed a specific blessing, He's placed specific direction for your life, and you decide, nah, I'm going to do opposite, but God didn't sign off on it, it does not work. So let's take this attempted name change as a lesson as we go throughout this week, when we pray and we study and we listen to God's voice, not just for this week, but for the rest of our lives. Let us not be like Naomi, who wanted to be Mara, who wanted to change from being a pleasant person to being a delight to her family and those around her, to being a bitter person because our circumstances changed. No, when our circumstances change, we just roll with the punches because God does not give us more than we can handle. Never has and never will. Sometimes it might feel that way, but that's not what's happening. So let us go and be Naomi's and not Mara's. Let's be the Ruths who will go where they are called, even if it seems strange. Because, Ruth was not a Hebrew woman. She was from Moab. She was from a completely different place. But God used her. She is one of the women in the line of Jesus. Jesus comes from this woman. And it doesn't matter what your origin story is, right? God can use anyone. So if you're sad, be sad, but don't let that change who you are, because you only need to be sad for a moment. We remember, when we remember who has called us and why we have decided to continue on this walk, on this path, that He has called us to, it's a beautiful thing. So go, be Naomi as you go throughout this week. Be a delight and be pleasant in all that you do.